Welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Jager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Jager. And today we are here with Damien from Renner Racing Development. And we're going to be discussing the GridLife Laguna Seca Time Attack event and some other things that happened there. All right, guys. You guys both happened to go to this event. I was unlucky enough to just be sitting at home watching the live stream, being very boring. You guys, Kilgore here, he was racing in the event. Damien signed up to race in the event. It got a little rough. We'll get into that. But Damien got to experience all the fun things that happened at the GridLife event. So let's kind of just start off with okay, how did you guys end up prepping for this event? Obviously, Kilgore doesn't live in Southern California like Damien, myself. And even Southern California really doesn't help you considering the fact that Laguna Seca is like 7-8 hours up. But at the end of the day, it's a lot closer than Nashville. So Kilgore, give me some expose on how you ended up getting and why you decided to go to Laguna Seca.
It's always been a track, and I think this is probably the same for most people, especially who drive cars. Like, it's a bit of an iconic track. You've probably driven it in like Forza or Gran Turismo, right? Like, you have a lot of laps. It's one of the more iconic tracks in terms of the U.S. And for me, it was, in terms of West Coast tracks, it probably ranked up there as one of the number one tracks. Like, if I ever had a chance to go to, that's the one that I would want to race. So fast forward to this year, GridLife was doing their second year out at Laguna, and I was trying to plan at the beginning of this year, 2024, what my season was going to look like. And so, if you're familiar with GridLife, they do a gold pass where you can purchase at least 4 events, 4, 5, 6, however many events you want to purchase. And so I was kind of like, you know what, like, I'm going to do gold pass. I'm going to purchase Laguna, even if I don't know how I'm going to get out there. Like, I want to go ahead and at least get my name down, right? And so then, so that was sort of what locked me in. And then basically at that point, it was like, okay, I've got pretty much all year to figure out how am I going to get out there. So it is a 30-hour haul from Nashville to Laguna. So, yeah, which I think maybe we'd have to go all the way back to maybe our first episode, Jager, where you talked about going from SoCal to Road Atlanta.
Yep.
Like, that is probably maybe even a little bit further. Like, that is, it can be fun. I mean, it's an
it's not
an
very
experience.
fun. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. Once you're far enough
once you get there.
it, yeah. Once you're far enough past it and you look back on it, you're like, oh, that was fun. Like, the fond memories. But when you're in it, you're like, dude, this sucks. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that being
it's one
said,
of those situations. I completely agree with you though. Laguna Seca, it's by far, bar none, a track that I think everybody should go to at some point. An absolutely epic track. It's hard to find a day that's actually there where most cars can, sing as loud as they possibly can and actually be able to, really go wild. So, when these guys actually get these events and have them non-DB restricted, just so everyone understands, Laguna Seca is one of those places where they built a racetrack and then a bunch of yuppies came in and built houses all around the racetrack. And then they decided to make it so you can't have loud things in the racetrack, which somehow people were okay with. I don't know. It's freaking idiotic. It's so annoying. So the race cars can't be race cars, and we have to make things quiet, and they have to make these cool things called Laguna pipes so that people can get under the 92, 93 dB decibel limit and all that crazy crap.
Yeah.
So, all right, Damien, what about yourself?
So we went to Laguna with kind of minimal preparation, I would say, mainly because that car is on track year-round. So it's constantly being maintained. The week or two prior to Laguna, we were out just to test that everything worked on the car after doing some major changes. And after that, everything seemed to check out, so we loaded up the car and went up there. It took us 7 hours.
Oh,
So a lot less than Kilgore.
a lot less than Kilgore, but still within this. Just all these people that like to think like California is like this simple little, it's a state where you can drive 7 hours in the state and still be in the state. It's kind of like Texas in that weird way.
It's not just
And
Texas this big.
yeah, exactly. So I forgot to do one critical thing here. So Damien, right? Who is Damien? Why is he on the show? What's he doing? So obviously, Damien is an owner of Renner Racing Development. He is also the driver of their badass cars that they make. And we'll have Damien kind of give you a real good idea of what Renner Racing Development does, how they do it, and just give us a recap. What's the business do?
So, myself and my dad, we have a Subaru shop called Renner Racing Development. We have an amazing crew of people with us, and we build Subarus. We maintain them, everything for from regular oil changes to full blown race cars, and everything in between. And sometimes we do some time attack.
Heck yeah, man. I mean, you guys been doing time attack since all I could remember. I mean, that's been a huge part of essentially my time attack journey has been kind of with your family. So I think that's pretty cool all within itself. I mean, I've got to see from when I think Damien got his license,
Yeah.
or maybe even before then, to now. So, Damien, what's your weapon of choice when it comes to your time attack vehicle?
So it's always been Subarus. It's always been Subarus. I started in a 2008 STI, which I used for an enthusiast class, which was a great car. I got my feet wet with that. I got to experience low power and building up from there. After that came the big car, which was the big GC8, which is a completely different situation from what my enthusiast class car was.
Completely different animal, big time.
It was big time, and now there is also a practice car in the garage, which we use to keep in shape, because as you know, you can't run a 700 horsepower car all day long, or frankly even too often.
True story.
So all Subarus.
So what's
Yeah,
the as a guy who's not a Subaru, what is GCA? Like what chassis? I assume that's maybe a chassis.
Yes, the GC8 is
Am I
a
even way off?
chassis,
Okay.
the first generation of the Imprezas, which is the lightest, the prettiest, and the best over. I mean, in my opinion.
Ooh, those are some fighting words in the Subaru community right there. A little bit.
Well, he's
I
on the
just
show,
don't
so
think
he
you
can yeah he
build
can
a
he can say whatever he
better-
wants.
Yep.
I don't think you can build a lighter Subaru.
Oh, you definitely can't. I will absolutely agree with you on that statement. You cannot build a lighter Subaru than that in any which way. And just so that everyone can kind of get a quick look, this is the practice car. I know it's a dark picture, but the practice GC8 is still an absolute beautiful piece of machinery. I believe, Damien, you just said you guys just put a sequential in it as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so you got a sequential. I mean, this thing's got, I'm assuming, just because we both have a admiration for some things Amir has built, I'm assuming this is an Amir-built splitter and rear wing?
Actually, on that car specifically, it's just the side plates.
Oh, okay.
We are actually in the process of putting the RS Future rear wing and splitter onto this car from the old car, from the big car.
Nice. Like I said, we all like some good old Amir aero on these cars, so it looks really nice and is massively functional, so it's always cool to check out. So again, this is the car that you actually took to Laguna, correct?
Correct.
And what class does that put you in?
Unfortunately, after we put the sequential gearbox, that put us into track mod, which makes us unbelievably below the
Underprepared.
threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the car is significantly underpowered for obvious reasons, as it is a practice car.
How much is it making again? Sorry.
460.
Oh, okay. So so people can really understand, like 460 in a Subaru built by an amazing shop like these guys have. That is a very dependable situation that you can just, like you said, take around the track, whirl, burn tires up, burn brake pads up, and really get the driver just some really good seat time. Hence, making this car a practice car.
So that was the whole point
And
of the car, exactly.
what's the weight of the practice car? And so GCA, that's like, is that like a 90s? We're talking about
GCA,
90s
yes,
chassis?
from 95 to 2001.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This one specifically being a 2000. This car weighs about 3,000 pounds. It's actually not a very light GC8. It can be lighter, which we are also in the process of putting on some carbon doors, and we'll see if the roof comes in on time. But those are actually big things in those cars that make a huge chunk of difference in the weight of the car. So we'll see if those come in before finals, but we're going to make the car a little bit lighter so that it resembles the big car even more.
Out of curiosity, in what class are you in GTA for finals? Limited?
Limited, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it'll be the blue practice car
Correct.
that you're taking to finals? All right.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Cool.
the big car ain't going to make it, right?
Unfortunately not. There was the chance of actually making it. We just chose not to push because as you and I both know what happens when you do everything last minute, the nights before the event, it doesn't always pan out that great. And after the investment that we've made into the car and the time it has taken, there was no point to rush anything, as nothing ever should be, but it's time attack.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that racing does a lot of times come down to the last final minutes. But like you said, you guys have a practice car. You guys are already going to be there. You're going to be having a good time. You're going to be kind of seeing what a practice car can do. I think you're doing it right, making sure that you get the car done. You guys aren't building nothing to take away from an enthusiast class or a street class build, but you guys aren't building that. Your car is still a upper echelon limited class build that is a really difficult car to build, especially at the knife edge of the rules. So it's something you can't take lightly. You really need to make sure. I mean, how much power does the big car bank?
The big car last time was on the Dynamate 711.
Yeah, so you're talking over 700 horsepower in a car that's one of the lightest chassis possible in a Subaru. So, and it's going to have big aero. I mean, this obviously the goal for you, the goal for your team is, I'm assuming, is the overall limited class record, the current professionally awesome record, which is a 142 something, and that is incredibly difficult. Out of curiosity, how close have you gotten to that record?
I'm a second and a half off. I'm at a 44.1.
Okay, so you're inching your way there. That's what you got to do. All right, so let's break it back down. So I'm gonna go with the sad news first. Sad news first. So Damien, what happened? I didn't see you on the stream, and I was even curious. I didn't see you out there, so I was like really wondering what the heck was going on, and found out later. So give us your take.
So our very reliable car that we normally trust gave us all the issues that it possibly could have all in one weekend. In all fairness, with the abuse this car takes, I was not upset in the slightest. So, but basically what happened is we got there, and on the first session out, I believe, even before the first hot lap, we blew the flex pipe on the up pipe, and that started melting some stuff. Luckily, I came in pretty quickly before it melted everything. Immediately, we called our guys because obviously, we're 8 hours away. We left on Thursday. We were there Friday morning. That happened Friday morning. Our amazing team, they got in the car right away, brought us another up pipe. From there, got that done Friday night. Saturday morning, we went out, and something that has never happened to us happened, which my dad, if you know him, he prides himself on his work. He's never had an intercooler coupler pop out.
Oh,
and
man.
Subarus, that's a big deal.
It is.
And sure enough, I do half a lap. I get on the gas, no boost. Okay, cool. Come inside, easy fix. We go back outside. I get to do the first lap around the track at 50%, to kind of learn the corners and
Getting it warmed up, getting it ready.
speed. And
Damien, have you been to Laguna before?
no, that was my first time. So
Oh
Okay.
man! So
That was my first
you spent your first day going, oh man, this thing just broke. Now we got to wait for these guys to get here. Got it fixed up. Then you get to your first lap on the second day. An intercooler pops off. You come in, then you get that fixed up. And you still haven't even been able to really turn a lap to see the racing line yet.
Yeah.
That's rough. Okay, so go on. Sorry.
I went around the track, but when you're doing it at a slow speed, you can't tell where a corner is supposed to throw you, how fast you can go gearing and whatnot. And anyway, we get on the track for the third time, and I'm able to do a lap. I turn something like a 137, and then I start going for another lap.
Just
and
first
in the
first lap out 137.
Kilgore
casually.
laughs.
Yeah,
Kilgore laughs, but really what he's thinking is, this son of a...
the car had more in it, so I wish I could have gave it more, but right in the corkscrew as I'm coming down on the second hot lap that I'm doing, I see smoke coming out, and
Ooh.
okay, cool. Something's not good. I am very close to the pits, so I just, instead of pitting and ruining people's sessions, I just put it in the pits to see what's going on, and turns out it's a power steering leak, which 20-year-old power steering lines can't be bad, It is what it is.
You can't get mad at the 20-year-old power steering line for finally letting go,
Yeah.
especially. And I'm not trying to dive too much into it, but probably a little bit of extra heat from the flex pipe breaking and putting a lot of extra heat into the engine bay, mixed with just things moving around and shaking. And Laguna is a pretty violent track, especially when you're talking about the drop off that you run into, and some of the different areas there can be a very violent track in that sense. So I did hear, I think I heard some people saying they were having like their power steering overheat as well. And that has been a case for Subarus in the past, where people were worried about power steering overheating depending on sticky tires and so on and so forth. So yeah, power steering, you also have to watch out, because that power steering fluid kind of flammable, kind of very flammable. So probably a very, very smart driver move on your part of just yanking it right into the pits and doing what good time attacker drivers do, is staying out of the way of other people's way, so that they can continue to get their good laps in. So big kudos to you for actually paying attention to that. We've definitely seen a lot of interesting fires and things go on in recent years, which not so good. So did you decide to park it after that?
After that, I called around the local dealerships around Laguna Seca to see if they had lines. But, this is a swap from 2006 into the GC. They're not going to have those lines in stock. And I figured, what, why push my luck? It is what it is. At the end of the day, even if we had fixed it, that I still would not have made it into the Podium Sprint. So it ended up being a little pointless to fix anyway. And the event was so great that why not just enjoy the event?
Okay, so yeah, at that juncture, like you said, just get to enjoy the event, get to check it out. As we all kind of know, GridLife is awesome in the sense that they have time attack, they have car show, drifting, they had the rush racing, they had GLTC, they had a lot of things. They had car, anything that you wanted to think of car related, they had it. So give us a little rundown. What are some of the things that you saw that really jumped out at you and made that event really cool for you?
Well, immediately as you arrive the facility, like I said, I've never been there. You hear stories. I've heard stories about Laguna Seca since I was a kid, and never made my way up there. And just as you arrive, it's in a beautiful mountain. The facility's beautiful. And as we pulled in, which was Thursday night, people were already unloading the cars, and you just see tents, trucks, semi-trucks of cool cars and cool things for people to do in the car show. You see all the cars getting unloaded. Beautiful facility, like I said. And then once the sun is up, that's where the fun starts, and there's so much to do.
Yeah.
You get to see a lot of cars that you've seen online. You get to meet cool people that you've probably also seen online. And then you get to watch whatever you please. GLTC, Rush Series, Time Attack. There was drifting. There was so much. There was always filled with something, which was great.
Did you get to see some of the drifting down the corkscrew? I think that would have been a pretty cool thing to check out. So was that something you ever check out?
I did not get to watch the drifting at the corkscrew. I got to watch it at turn three because I was so impressed with the fact that on this track you can see almost every single corner up close,
Oh yeah.
which doesn't happen at every track. But you actually had great views um, of every corner. Turn three specifically, there was literally a place where you can buy drinks right behind, sit on a table, and watch the cars go right in front of you at a decent.
And that's exactly what you need after you just had quite a rough weekend with your Subaru. You want a few drinks and watch some cool racing and get to check out some really cool cars. So you mentioned some really cool, YouTuber slash TV personalities, anything like that. Any ones of note that you saw that you really thought was like, dang, that's pretty cool.
I'm not too big on the YouTube things. I don't really know a lot of them. Uh, I just know the people know them because they told me. But
Okay.
TJ
I feel
Hunt,
you. I feel you
um,
because I don't know
nice.
people's names at all either. Like
I'll
I
recognize your
know.
car.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll see your car and I'll know the car, but I couldn't tell you who the person is. But
Yeah.
I think, like you mentioned, so there was T.J. Hunt. I know Chris Forsberg was there, Rush Racing, and he had, I think, some people from his crew or something like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting, kind of cool. Uh, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was somebody there that was doing drifting, time attack, and Rush, I think it was, all in the same. Like they were obviously different cars, but they were actually doing all of the different style of events. It might have even been T.J. Hunt. I could be incorrect with that statement, but could have been. And I was like, oh, that's a commitment. Kind of brings me back to our boy Navarres Racing. Back when he brought three cars to finals and ran three cars in one event, which I was just like, you
If
are retarded.
I remember correctly, he said it was pretty rough to run three cars, and he's like, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, he said it was not worth it. I mean, to do that kind of thing, you better have your fitness about through the roof. And let's just say our boy Navarres, no, not so much. Not
And you also
he's
have to
not at
have
the
a
peak of
unique
Damien.
skill to be able to jump from a car to car and be actually be fast.
Well, especially like in his case, he was going from like an Atom to a GTR and to I
To
don't
an
even remember
Evo.
yeah, to the Evo. So it's like three completely different handling characteristics on that car to make it all right, and it was just so rough. Um, well, so out of all the things at Grid Life, what do you think was the coolest thing you got to check out?
It would be pretty tough to actually determine what's the coolest, but I really enjoyed the drifting. I I enjoy drifting a lot.
Okay, Damien, get off the show. Get out of here with this drifting crap.
So it was cool to see. It was cool to see right in front of you. It was great cars, but then also the time attack cars were. I mean, Sasha Honest was there.
Dude, that
The
car, I want to see that car in person.
that car is a piece of art.
It is.
People were going crazy over the Ford GT that was there, which what a
Cool.
machine!
It
Oh
is.
my god!
Yeah.
But that's a Nissan 350Z that's running a second off of that car.
I
Yes, it's a highly developed car.
completely agree with you on every level in this statement.
And this is so incredible to see because it actually puts into perspective just how fast Time Attack is.
Yeah. Yeah, the leaderboards, right? When you start talking about the Ferris Khartoumis, the Sashas, the very top elitist group of Time Attack, you are into that realm. I mean, that 4GT is not just like a 4GT that you can go buy off not like you can just go buy a 4GT off the showroom or anything like that. But I mean, that is a very like purpose-built race car, which I could argue. I
By
could
Ford.
By Ford. I could very much argue to some degree where I go, it's cool to see that car out there. I wish it didn't get so
Not
much
time attack
airtime.
car.
it's not a time attack car. Like, I would rather have watched Sasha run his laps over and over and over again. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I commend the guy for bringing it out there. It's a bajillion-dollar car that most will never be able to afford, so it's cool to see. But I wish that it didn't get so much focus, because I think it's more important to focus on the guys that spent their time in their garage working on these cars, getting them ready, and building them to be time attack cars rather than a car that was built by Ford. Admittedly, super cool, but not a time attack car.
Well, this is the soul of time attack, right? It's the putting these cars together, and it for the longest it was the battle of battle of shops. It was a battle of tuner shops and manufacturers. Then it progressed a little bit, but bringing a car like this that should probably be in its own class, which I believe GTA has a class like that now, right? Is it called GTX or Super?
GTX,
yeah.
So I think that's where this car belongs, even though, I mean, I guess it has a VIN number, but...
Well, it's interesting because it does have a VIN number, but it is not road legal.
Oh.
So I'm not exactly... It's not, yeah. So I'm not exactly sure how that fits in. And GTA, GridLife, they all sort of have, slight differences, but I guess as long as it has a VIN number, it is eligible. But it's cool. I always appreciate it, even like with Global Time Attack for the GTX class. It's always cool to see purpose-built race cars as a benchmark for where Ferris, Sasha, these guys are. Like, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, like that's cool. Like that is a amazing car. It's fantastic for GridLife that Benjamin, the guy who brought it out, like said, hey, I want to show up to this event and I'm going to bring out my incredibly rare and super expensive, hypercar. I guess it would be considered a hypercar. Like that's
I'm
cool.
gonna go with
But at the same time, I'm kind of like the time itself is only for me is relevant as a benchmark. And that's sort of it. Like if he continually pushed and dropped that time lower and lower, like, okay, that's cool. But Sasha's car, like I could spend all day looking at that car and asking him questions. It was super cool to see that car in person.
Yeah, and again, then I look at it as kind of like a very cool, interesting situation in that unlimited rear-wheel drive or unlimited class as an overall, because you had Sasha Anise in his 350Z and at a 123. Then you had Craig Coker in his all-wheel drive Model S, the dark helmet, at a 128, which I'm still wondering, is there more that car can get? I don't remember what they ran last year, but I don't feel like he had enough progression from last year to this year. And then you had a Miata, of all freaking cars, a Miata come out and run and get fourth place. So I kind of go down this weird road where if I eliminate Ben Sloss, that would have been your top three. You would have been a 350Z, a Model S, and a Miata.
That's super cool.
Which would have been such a cool thing when you talk about like time attack. Because I'll be the first to say it. I'm going to tell you right now. I'll be the first to say it. Miatas are like one of the most difficult cars of all time to run in time attack and to do well, because it's just so difficult for those guys to come out and actually do well. They're just such a disadvantage. So it's super cool. I know Ryan. He was at finals a little last year. Actually had a car fire, and I think he ended up getting like a whole new chassis and like doing all sorts of stuff, and rebuilt this car into something bigger and better. So that's really cool to see. I hope to see him at finals this year as well, because I just like to see really cool cars do really cool things. So now I'm curious. Let's jump in and let's start talking to Kilgore about his experience at GridLife. And I'm just going to foreshadow this. There is a trophy in the background, and it does have a big number 3 on it. So our boy went out and got third place in Street GT, which huge achievement there. So his immense drive from Nashville was absolutely worth it on all levels. But Kilgore, run us through this. Tell us how it went, what happened. What were your deficits? What were some of the things that you had to work through to get that third place happening?
It was an awesome event. It was an awesome event. That word really doesn't even do it justice. So I will say this.
Sounds understated.
I know. So it worked out really well. I hooked up with a group out of Cincinnati. I guess there's just Subaru shops all over the place. I don't know why you guys are so into Subaru, but Turn In Concepts out of Cincinnati. They were taking a couple cars out there, and they had extra room, so they put out a call saying, hey, if anybody wants to have us ship their car out there, we'll take care of it. We'll get it out there for you, and then bring it back. So it's a 4-hour haul from Nashville to Cincinnati, which sounds much better than a 30-hour haul. So I got the car to them. They did a great job. They got my BMW out to Laguna, and I will say, I think they showed up. I think they got there Wednesday and started to unload it. And so one of the guys with Turn In Concepts, Peter, he ended up sending me a video. They actually had like one of these nice 18-wheeler car haulers that has like the deck that goes up, and you drive the cars in at the top. And so my car was in at the top, and so he sent me a video of like them backing the car out onto the ramp and then lowering the car. And even there, I was like, I was like, man, that video is so cool. Like it's worth it just to have that video of my car like being pulled out of a professional car hauler. But overall, the car did well all weekend. Had a very minor issue that I dealt with all weekend that really was not impacting performance. I think it was maybe after the first or second session. I was just kind of looking over the car. So I was I was paddocked with the Turn In Concepts guys, so they do a really good job. They run cars. So they prep Andy Vocal's C8 Corvette, who is Street GT champion for this year. So they know what they're doing. They also run a couple cars in GLTC. So they had a few cars there. So we were kind of paddocked with them, and they were helping me out with a minor issue. Basically, the issue was that the rear outer axle boot kept popping off of the hub and was spewing axle grease into the wheel well and over the suspension components. So it was annoying. The boot had not torn, which I have come to find out that BMW doing BMW things, they don't sell replacement boots. So if you tear an axle boot, you have to replace the entire axle.
That sounds like a great way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No,
so I'm like,
no need for the rubber boot. Just whole new axle.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing.
So so we were kind of looking at it, right? Like, and so we tried to zip tie it. It popped back off. We tried a bigger zip tie. It popped off. So that was Friday. And then Saturday I ended up going, or like Friday night I ended up going to like Home Depot, and I got like some of those like metal zip ties. And the good thing is that on Saturday, so that I put that metal zip tie in, the metal zip tie did really well. It actually held the boot to the hub, but then at that point the boot actually tore from where it was being held. So again, minor issue, just had to kind of keep cleaning up the grease. Towards the end of the weekend, there wasn't much grease left, but it's not a huge deal. And so I was like, all right, well, it is what it is. But other than that, and that has pretty much been most of my year. Very minor issues, and I think that is probably also dictated by running in Street GT. there's not a lot of modifications you can do to the car, right? So if you have a pretty reliable street car, you don't really run into a lot of issues. The car's only 10 years old, so it's a 20 or 9 years old. It's a 2015. So not a lot of issues. I'm not dealing with what 30-year-old power steering lines that have been in the car, since it was came off the production line.
Yeah, definitely one of those things where you're not having such old parts can definitely make a big difference. Now, the interesting thing is you were having a bunch of the boot problems. We were talking about how kind of difficult Laguna Seca can be with the different corners and so on and so forth. I wonder if that has to do something with like your alignment and getting camber out, or do you have adjustable arms in the rear or anything like that?
Yep. So there are. It runs on full SPL control arm. So I did have. I had a very minor amount of toe in the rear, but I do think, and this was something you were alluding to earlier, Jager, the compressions and the speeds that you run, especially turn 5, turn 6 through the corkscrew, right? Like there's a lot of compression, and you are hitting that gas as soon as you hit that compression, right at the apex of the turn. So that could help generate. And this is not an uncommon problem on tracked M4s of that year.
Okay.
The boot, that axle that boot will build up heat, and then the pressure just causes the boot to eventually just pop off. It'll just sort of weaken that clamp and cause it to pop off. So anyway, very minor issue. So I do think that probably could have been one thing that finally caused it to let go, the clamp. So, but otherwise, obviously, that didn't cause too big of an issue, because I just kept going out there. The track was fantastic. I really enjoyed the track. Although I will say this, I wish I had a video of it. I don't really have it queued up. But first session out is a practice session on Friday. So obviously had never been there before. GridLife generally will grid cars for the first practice session on theoretical lap times based on, if you've run with GridLife before. They kind of know, okay, maybe where you generally fall in your class. They'll kind of predict about maybe what times you should run at Laguna. So I ended up in Group B and was car number 1 out of Group B. So I was like, okay,
no one
great.
to follow.
I've never been around the track. I'm the first car, who's going to be leading around the other 20 cars on the out lap. Don't screw it up. So, going back to one of your questions that you asked earlier on, what did I do to kind of prep for this event? I did do some sim racing. I did some sim time, some practice, and for the most part, it was really good. But there were a couple of areas that I noticed in real life the track was not quite the same. And the major one that caught me out was the distance between turn 7 and turn 8 in real life was actually much shorter than it seemed on the sim. So all that to be said, we're on an outlap. I go up over the crest at turn 7. So that is the rising hill just before you get to the corkscrew. So technically the corkscrew is turn 8. So I come up over the hill at turn 7, and I even knew, right? Like I even knew the reference points to be looking for. I had listened and watched many YouTube videos of track walks, track descriptions. Here are things to look for. Here are reference points. A lot of people say when you're coming over the corkscrew, there's 3 trees on the left-hand side, and if you aim for that 3rd tree, right, like that'll set you up well. The problem is like I go over the corkscrew. I just did not expect how hard you had to turn, like how sharp of a turn that was. So on the outlap, and my wife, she was out there, she got a video, like I am over the corkscrew, like through I was on the outside of the curb, like hitting the big orange curb, just made a total mess of it, right? Like on the outlap. And I was like, all right, like, okay. So I need to turn a little bit harder there.
Note to self.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was
Is that what
funny
you were
because
looking? Is that what you're looking
told
for,
my wife-
Damien? The three trees?
The third tree. The third tree.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is.
something
It
like that.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Which
it's a
is
really
funny.
good reference point.
Yeah. Once you kind of get it and you know what you're looking for, like it does work really well. But it was funny because I told my wife, I was like, look, we came all this way, we spent all this money to get, to come out here. I mean, it was a few $1,000s to ship the car out there, right? As well as time, staying at the track, doing all this kind of stuff. And I was like, first session, you at least have to go to the corkscrew and at least get one picture of my car coming over the corkscrew so that if I crash on the first lap, I at least have a picture and proof that my car, was at Laguna. So she was like, okay. So she ran up to the corkscrew, and of course, first lap, I'm just completely screwing up the corkscrew on the outside. And so I was like, all right, So I come around for my first hot lap, and this was something I was fighting all weekend. My car did not like coming up over the crest at 7 and then getting on the brakes. I think because the car would get light and then have to try and settle back down. My brake pedal would just go hard. Like
Go into ABS or ice mode or
into
something
the
like that?
yeah, like into the ABS sort of ice mode. Yeah, like it just did not like coming up over that. So my second lap, still first car in the group, I come up over that crest with much more speed. The car's into ABS, the brake pedal's kind of hard, and I am trying to slow this thing down as much as I can. Overshoot the corkscrew again, so I'm off onto the curb and like into the dirt on the second lap. And so I'm like, God, like I've got to get people
Get it
think that I don't know
together.
like what
Get
I'm
it
doing. Yeah,
together.
like I've got to get this together, man. So luckily after that, I never did it. I finally did get it together, but yeah,
Well,
corkscrew.
we're still waiting for the wife pictures of you on the other side. So when you get those,
All right,
just
yeah.
post them up for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I will for sure. But otherwise, like, yeah, the track was really good. There were a couple areas, turn 7, I was kind of having to try and figure out throughout the weekend, how does my car best like dealing with this sort of turn, crest into a hard braking zone, into the corkscrew. So I was trying a few different things there. But for the practice session and first day, I was like, okay, my goals are, let's get under a 140. I knew from the times last year, I think Andy Vocal even won last year, I believe. They were at like 134s, 135s. So I thought if I could get into that area, 136 or below, that I would be competitive. So first day I was like, all right, let's get under a 140. Let's get used to all this, and then let's just start chipping away at time. So that's ultimately just kind of what I tried to do. Again, Peter Zhang at Turn In Concepts, he had been there before. We had data. He would review some video with me. We'd go over data, and we just sort of tried to find, okay, let's figure out the low-hanging fruit first. I think the biggest thing for me, the two biggest turns where I gain time and confidence are turn 1 and turn 6. Those are sort of the ones that are big commitment times where you can make up a lot of time. Turn 1, I think especially for street GT cars, you're talking about generally high horsepower cars, my M4, C8, that have very limited aero. So coming up over that turn 1 into turn 2, car was always a little sketchy. And so that was one area where I was continually sort of gaining confidence. Towards the end, in the podium sprint, I finally was like, all right, I'm going to send it, keep my foot flat, and did. And every session, and I think this speaks to continually finding time on the track, even when track conditions are getting worse. And that's just from me. This was my first time there at the track. Podium sprint, so this was the 6th session of the weekend. Every session I found more time, and in the podium sprint I ran my fastest time of the weekend. So I was super happy with that, proud, that I had been able to continuously find time, and ultimately ended up so it was myself and Dustin Williams, who was in a BMW M2, so he's a big YouTuber. He does a lot of stuff. Um, I knew it was going to be close with him. I've run against the M2s before, so this is the new M2, the G87 M2. Those cars, the G series BMWs, the M2s, the M3s, the M4s, like they have a very high ceiling, and people are still developing those. Um, I knew that that was going to be a tough battle, and there were, I think, I don't know, yeah. Let's see, I think there were
Seven M cars.
7 M cars, yeah, and I think or I think actually the majority of them. I think only
M2.
mine was the previous version, the F82, the F series.
Okay.
I think all of them were new G series. So I was like, man, like it's gonna be a tough battle. And I knew Dustin had also posted some other videos where he was showing, I think that he was in like the 38s. And so I knew it was gonna be tough. And he was actually slightly faster than me in the final session, so qualifying 3. So basically, going into the podium sprint, it was whoever was going to lay down the faster time. He ended up having a couple issues. I don't know exactly what the problem was in the podium sprint. I don't know if he overheated his tires or if he got into some oil. There was oil dry down on the track before we went out.
Oh, yeah, because he showed that he went off big in the final corner, right? Like
yeah, he did,
kicked
which I
that
think,
rear end out.
yeah, we had 3 laps in the podium sprint. So you got an out lap, then you had 3 flyers, and it kind of it really screwed him up because he did his first lap and he did a pretty good lap. I think he was in the 37s, and then he was coming around finishing his second lap, and in the last turn, he ended up sliding wide. So that killed his second lap, and then also
And
was
then
killing
his
the
third.
start of his third lap. So that really kind of,
Hosed him up, man.
it did.
So,
But
Damien, quick question for you. You were in the crowd during the podium sprints. What was the energy of the crowd? What was the energy going into those podium sprints and like seeing all these cars? Because I think the podium sprint is a really, really cool idea of throwing these guys on track and saying, hey, you got to lay down right now, and this is going to determine who wins or loses. So kind of what was your idea from the crowd side on how the podium sprint all went?
So it was actually during the podium sprint that I went to the corkscrew, and that's where I got to watch, and that's where I saw Kilgore go down as well. And
Nice.
it was great. It was a lot better than than what I'm used to. People were actually happy. There was guys like Jackie Ding that were doing, they were sliding the car for the crowd at one of the last laps. So people were really happy about that, and seeing all the cars, because all the cars going through the corkscrew, they all look cool. Let's be honest.
Yeah, always.
And people were enjoying the whole time during the podium sprint. There was a much higher energy than what you're normally used to.
Yeah, because I think one thing that Time Attack generally we kind of fail upon, right, is we get to these like final stages, and you really just don't know where people are at. You have to be following so closely to understand who's currently in first, who's in second, who's in third, and then like in Kilgore's case, right, Kilgore went into the podium sprint in fourth, so he had all to fight for to get to the podium itself. So I think, like for me, I know when I was watching, I'm sitting here, come on, man, come on, you gotta eke out these last few, this, that, and the others. So it gave you really something to cheer for. Now, granted, on any Time Attack day, you could say that for any Time Attack session, but I think it really amplified the pressure, and it kind of resembled some really old red line Time Attack stuff, right? Where you were like, this is the session, you got to lay it down, you just got to do it. And I found the podium sprint to be very interesting because now, one thing I will say that, because obviously World Time Attack does this exact same thing to a degree, but it's different because GridLife wipes out the times. So everybody is starting at 0, which that would probably be the one really big contentious part about this that I would say some people are really not going to like. Because let's just say, Damien, let's say you'd have gotten to the podium sprint and you were in third place. Now your time's wiped out. Now you're in third. Now you're in fifth because now you didn't get to compete because your car broke, right?
Oh.
Like,
Yeah, I was not aware of that because I didn't get to that point of the event. I was not aware of that.
yeah, that's a very contentious part to this. And when it comes to time attack, where times are all that matters, which I watched the Dustin Williams video, and one of the things that Dustin Williams talked about at the very end, of which big shame on Dustin Williams. He didn't even know the competitor that beat him. He couldn't say his name. Shame, Dustin. But we get to that point where Dustin goes, I had a better lap time than him in the final session, but he was able to lay it down in the podium sprint, which I will say, again, that goes into showing, the cool, calm, collected Kilgore versus Dustin going out and struggling to really put it down in that last final session that really mattered. And I think that's part of kind of the interesting part of it. But it's also something that I guarantee you, if this happens enough, people are going to cry enough where they might go, maybe we'll take that part out and we'll let the time still stack up.
If I understand correctly, effectively, if you're top 5, your time does not matter once to hit. It's all qualifying time up until the podium sprint if you're top 5.
Yep.
That's right. Which, I mean, I agree. I see what you're saying, Jager. The counter argument to that is if you still maintain all of the times throughout the weekend, then the podium sprint isn't anything different than just a limited, session 6, right?
Yeah.
Like
it goes
no
back
one's
to what
really
we were
going to
talking
care.
with the SCCA about SCCA, right? They were talking about consistency throughout the sessions and having to be able to put down those times every time. Again, I just go down into this. We have hit this weird plateau with time attack where it seems like guys' cars are being more and more consistent per se, and not
reliable. Yeah,
and reliability has been better. But when you start talking about the unlimited class and even in their case, street mod, track mod type cars, I mean, all we got to do is bring Dewey out here for 5 minutes, and that car's gonna break at some point. And if he ends up in a situation where he is in the podium sprint and he doesn't even get to run his car, and now he's in 5th place because of that, someone like Dewey's not going to be very happy about. I mean, I think anybody wouldn't be very happy about that.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious. I think it's a really, really cool idea, and I think it's awesome to watch it play out. I'm just curious how it's going to be in the long term.
Sure. I think that's fair. And I think it does help, though, with the spectators because
Agreed.
It is the podium sprint, right? This is the one set of laps that are going to dictate who actually raises the trophies.
Yep.
And that adds pressure, that adds excitement. And I think if you're going to do something like that, that is what you have to do. I understand that, someone's going to say, well, I came out, I set an awesome lap, in the second session and then the car broke. And it's well, that's unfortunate, right? You sort of just have to say, as the organizer, that sucks for you. Sorry about that. But that has also led some people. So usually it's a 2-day event. Usually that, first session on the second day is going to be fast, or is going to be the fastest. So what I have seen guys do is actually run that. They'll set their fast lap to make sure that they're in the podium sprint on that first session on day 2. They'll sit out session 2 on that second day just to not put miles on the car, not to put, heat cycles into the tire.
Yeah.
They'll, if they feel comfortable on that time, they'll sit in the pits while everybody else goes out, and then they'll save their car for the podium sprint, right? If everything looked good after that first session on day 2, we're comfortable with our time. Let's just hang tight, and then we'll go into the podium sprint. There has also been some, I don't know exactly all the details, but there has been some discrepancies on people's car break. Is it the car that gets into the podium sprint, or is it the
Ooh.
driver? Can I go use someone else's car for the podium sprint? And I know that has really there has been those issues that's really caused some consternation between drivers, the organizers, GridLife, etc. I'm not exactly sure where that stands, but that is another layer to it. Is am I getting in as the driver? Is my car? Who really is in the podium sprint?
So, Damien, I'll throw that question to you. What do you think? Do you think that it should be the driver is getting into the podium sprint, or do you think it's the driver and car? Like, if you brought both, I mean, technically you could bring both your cars, per se, and if they were in the same class, you could fall from one to and just jump into the other and keep going. Or, you know, if you had a customer car that came with you, you could say, well, his car's in street, but I'm just going to run it in my class because I need a car, so on and so forth. What do you think about that?
My opinion the current time is that it should be the driver. I think, especially in higher classes, these cars are pushed to the absolute limit where failures can happen, they can occur, and at that point, if you're across the country at a race, your car, broke down, you can't fix it at the moment, and you can drive someone else's car and actually, keep up your, championship points. Why not? I don't see
Okay.
anything wrong with that.
I will completely and utterly disagree with you and say it has to be. I would say that's what would make and I will go with what you said, right? Especially when you're across the country, like that does make sense, right? That absolutely does. But I would say that's what would make it more fun, I guess you could say. Terribly not fun for somebody. But that would be the point. It's supposed to be car and driver, one machine, one thing, entity, attacking that time and doing its thing. And we have seen rules about this in the past where they said, in different organizations I know of, where they said, like, once the event starts and you turn your first lap in a car, that is the car you were locked into for the event, and you cannot move to a different car. Now, with that said, I agree with you though, where it's like, man, if I'm leading the class, if I'm one event away from winning the championship, and I literally could get last place and win it, man, that would suck to be at this event. If it was in Michigan or something like that, and not be able to get it. So I can see both ways. I have my feelings. I think it makes it a little bit harsher.
I can see both ways as well, and I think whatever their organizations decide, kind of it is what it is, and I'll be fine either way. But I mean, you know what it's like to be across the country with what's known as a not so reliable car.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And like you said, I think it's just a situation where you got to work towards it. You got to get there, and I think this is where it's going to get interesting as you start looking at those like top tier track mod, unlimited, those type of cars. You're going to end up in a situation where you're probably going to get more people fighting against you, because it's also going to be hard to be like, hey, can I borrow a comparable car? So that's another thing.
Point, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, time attack used to be a battle of the shops as well. So the reliability of the cars is also a part of the sport. I would say how well the car is built. So, and that's where that would come into play, because this was a lesson. You guys, the team can grow from that, but that's where that ends, because for the next race you'll be better, but at this time the car broke, you're no longer able to run. It is what it is. Because we know with tuner cars, we're the ones really testing a lot of these parts that the community comes out with. We're the guinea pigs, and if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we're the ones that have to see if it does or not.
So I wanna quickly touch on this, right? So again, here are the results, and we're gonna kind of touch really quickly. I'm not gonna go over Sunday Cup because that doesn't count. I'm going with the professional awesome view of this. So then we jump into it. So then we jump into street. Will Dries comes out with his Elantra N, and he's been brutal with this car. Like, in any event he goes to, it's been absolutely amazing. I'm blown away at the times he's able to put down with this. Definitely a really cool situation. Porsche 718 came out, and this class was the tiniest class of them all, with only 4 competitors. But still, it was really cool to see the variety, right? We have a Hyundai, a Porsche, and an Integra all coming out and doing their thing. Thought that was really cool. The Street GT class itself was a monster of a class.
It was.
13 competitors. As we stated before, you had 7 M cars, which, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this class would be... I thought this class would be kind of dominated by Corvettes, technically, Camaros and Mustangs, and not the case. I mean, heck, there's more Teslas than there are Corvettes or Mustangs or anything like that. So maybe that's kind of a weird thing with rules. I don't know. There's a random Crown Vic at the bottom that I heard some people that were really excited that it was there. I'm definitely going to go the opposite direction on that and say I don't really get it, and Rob Campbell can suck it. They shouldn't be there. So then we're going to Street Mod. Street Mod's a really cool class. I feel like I didn't get to really take in enough Street Mod. I felt like it was kind of blended between a couple things too many times, where I really just didn't get to like capture that. But Cal Fortner, he was had some issues with his Mercedes that he's been running, and of course he borrowed a GT4 RS that a friend of his might had, I think, or something. I don't know. Really cool car. I'd really like to own one of these. Can't afford it, but really awesome car. And obviously he was able to keep his dream alive in the championship there by getting that GT4 in first place in Street Mod. And that class in itself was pretty tight. I mean, you're talking a 34 to a 37 for the top 3. I don't know what happened here, because Mike, he's usually really, really consistent with that Subaru of his. So I would love to get the story on that.
Yeah, he runs with Turn-In Concepts.
Yeah.
They were having he told me, now I can't remember. I don't remember if it was coolant issues.
Well, if it's a Subaru and coolant, it's usually called pushing coolant, and a head stud or a head gasket has gone. But he's been really consistent with that car. He's really developed that car from the ground up. Turn Concepts has been a part of that thing since day one. So it'd be kind of interesting to talk to him and understand exactly what was going on. But that was a pretty full classing as well, with 10 competitors. Great to see that many competitors out there. Track Mod was just monstrous with 17 competitors, obviously varying in time. Damien talked about only getting to run really let's say a lap and a half, which I'm just gonna say this to Damien. You were not that far off. Your lap time is not terrible, to say the least, with a 1:37.8, with only getting like a lap and a half out there. I think that if you didn't have those problems, you'd 100% been in that Podium Sprint, and it would have been really cool to see that car out on track doing its thing and fighting with those guys. I will say this, maybe this is just me, but there's something about the Supra that I'm just tired of seeing lately. I just feel like Supras are in the top. Like, I was excited as you cannot believe to see Brad Perkins win this event in his awesome M3. And I say he just overcame such a monstrous blow. He had his engine blow up literally like weeks before the event. He put a new engine in it, got it all set up, and then came out and then won the event. And he won the event in spectacular fashion, with Gabe Zamora actually leading the charge basically throughout the entire weekend. And he kind of stole it away from him there at the last minute, just like at COTA, by the way.
I was going to say, Jager, if you remember, deja vu.
Yeah, I bet you Gabe's going to go over there and put a nail in his tire for any last session we get into in the forthcoming future. Gary Wong, I'll give Gary, I'll give Gary some credit, because his Supra is probably one of the prettiest. It has this pretty purple paint job on it. His Supra is probably one of the best Supras out there, and he got himself third place. And those guys, I mean, that was tight. I mean, that was a 129.2, 129.6, and a 130.6, all in the top three. And Jackie Dean came out of left field. I didn't see him laying down a 130 at all. And he came out of left field. I kind of was watching some things as the weekend progressed, and I definitely was wondering if he was like up in the power, because I will say this: I was watching him do some laps early on, and I had heard a rumor that maybe he would run the Hoosier Time Attack Pros, and I was wondering if he put those on, and they did not like that car. But I cannot confirm nor deny if that was the case or not. But in watching the live stream,
they never did.
So in watching the live stream, that car was loose. I mean, I've seen Jackie like go out there and like wheel it around and drift the car around a little bit for funsies, but it looked insane. Like, that car looked like it was set up by, well, I guess we're all amateurs here, but it looked like a sub-amateur. Like, it looked terrible. But his team put it together and was able to get him fourth as an overall in that class, which was astounding considering what that car kind of started out as in the beginning there. So big kudos to them and getting that car situated and moving in the right direction. But again, Gabe Zamora and his 911, that car was just sounding beautiful, doing, you know, absolutely gorgeous things all weekend long. Sadly, he was ousted by Brad Perkins at the very end. And again, we covered it pretty heavily earlier on in the show, but Ben Sloss came out in that Ford GT. Beautiful car. I'm assuming at some juncture both you guys happened to sneak over there and check that car out at some time during the event. But it was absolutely gorgeous. But I'll say this, when I look at this as a chart, Sasha is my overall winner of the event. Like, I'm just going to say it now. Sasha's the overall winner of that event for me, with Craig Coker and Ryan coming in third. It was also cool to see the Brian Navarra Mustang come out there, do a 129. He was whipping that thing around. Poor old Mike Desold, he also had his beautiful Camaro out there, put that into the wall a little bit. But you know what I love? I made a comment on his Instagram post because those guys were, in my opinion, it was completely awesome. They immediately went on social media, posted the video of them going off, and said, you know, we will rebuild, we will get this thing back up, and we're going to have it back up for SEMA and be able to, you know, do the thing. And I respect that. I respect that more than most probably understand, in the sense that you can make a mistake like that, and to post it online for people to critique and to groan and moan and do the things that the internet does. I love that they did that. I absolutely do. Much respect to those guys for posting that video and having it out there for everybody. And yeah, I thought it was a really cool event to watch.
Shout out also to I know he was down in Unlimited, but it's an incredible time. Bailey Woods in his E36 M3, what is that, 30.7? A 30.7. I mean, he was not in the Podium Sprint, but that is that is a ridiculous time. Is it an S50? I think it is an S54 swapped E36.
I think you're
so
correct.
he's around.
Damien knows
he's
his
in the
BMWs.
300s for power. Yeah, he's in the 300s for power. So like, incredible time. That guy can wheel. So it was great seeing that car out in person as well.
Bailey
the Aero,
makes
I mean,
like 330 to the wheels. It's really underpowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll also say this, Nicky Hayes, unlimited front-wheel drive record in his CRX. Nicky Hayes gets a lot of love from the community as a whole. Also, Chris Boersma, which I haven't heard that name in a really long time. His Civic has kind of just disappeared off the planet for a lot of the stuff that I'm used to. But again, he set a record, and Brad Perkins set a record. We always got to recognize the records, right? And again, Andy Vogel in Street GT set his record. Craig Coker in all-wheel drive Street GT set a record. Will Dries front-wheel drive record in Street. And it looks like Nick Allen set a record for Club TR. I missed Club TR because I completely missed it, which is a really cool class that I think is more akin to what anybody could jump into and just have a good time in. So really cool to see all these guys out there having a good time. And man, that was a cool event. Any last words, any last parting words to our people out here? Something, if you want to say one thing about GridLife, and this event as a whole. What do you guys got? Let's start off with Damien, and then we'll go to Kilgore.
Go check it out. Go to the event. You will not be disappointed. The way I saw it was, I mean, obviously in my world, Subi Fest, but for race cars.
Oh, that is a really cool comparison for the Subaru guys out there. Heck yeah.
Because there's everything, including, you get to watch a world-class track. You get to watch people do time attack, wheel-to-wheel, and drift on it. You get to have a lot of fun. There's plenty to see. There's plenty of people to meet. There's plenty of people to have good conversations with, learn from. If you're looking to get into the sport, go and talk to any one of these guys. Everyone will be happy to help. And you can have drinks, watch, have some food. It's a perfect weekend for any racing guy.
Heck yeah, man. Awesome. Kilgore, what you got for us?
I will echo that. Damien, you're absolutely right. Like, if you're interested in cars, it is a fantastic show. It is a show that generally rivals professional series. I mean, they have vendors. They have big-time people showing up there with their cars, with their trailers. Toyo's there. Falcon FCP Euro was out there. I mean, they have some big names out there, so you can go by, see all their stuff. But then at the same time, because it's still somewhat of an amateur level event, like, you can just go right up to the cars. You can go right up to the drivers and go talk to them, right? Like, you have basically unfettered access to the paddock, to nearly the entire grounds. You can go up to the corkscrew. You can pretty much go wherever you want to go watch the cars. Like, it's just a really open access type event, and so that, I think, is what's really cool. I had multiple people coming up to me asking stuff about the car, like, dude, like, like, I was really proud because I did end up, while technically, yes, Dustin did have ultimately a faster time than me on the final sheets that matter for the results. I was the fastest BMW for Street TT. All right, like, that was one of my goals, was to really be up there, be maybe the fastest. But I had guys coming by being like, oh, like, what have you done to your car? Like, oh, what suspension are you running?
Where can we protest you?
About, yeah, like, oh, like, I want to put some seats, I want to put some harnesses in there. Like, what do you use? All this kind of stuff, right? Like, I'll open up the car and be like, oh yeah, this is what I did. So the access is fantastic, and GridLife is continuing to grow on that West Coast. As you guys said, the West Coast already has so many events, so many organizations, but I haven't been to any others, but I think GridLife probably is one of the ones that does one of the best shows, so to speak. So it's going to be exciting to continue to see that grow. The thing that I love most about it is you have the regulars with GridLife, right? You've got the Andy Vocals, Peter Gramberg, who won Club TR. You have a lot of the guys who regularly show up. Cal Fortner, right? And it's so much fun for all of these guys to come out to the West Coast. And so you have, like, the West Coast drivers versus your sort of regular Midwest drivers. And I enjoy seeing ultimately, like, who comes out on top. I think it's super great when some of the West Coast drivers are able to beat the regulars. But then it's also cool to see, like, those regulars come out and show, like, look, we don't mess around. We build ridiculous cars. I mean, California is known for the great car culture, but I enjoy seeing that sort of battle between Midwest drivers and the West Coast drivers out on the West Coast tracks, and sort of see who reigns supreme.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. They used to do, like, a battle at Chuckwalla for Arizona drivers and California drivers, and East versus West and drag racing and stuff like that. And I think stuff like that could really come in as we get further down the road. And maybe if they did, like, a West Coast, East Coast series, and then you had a meet in the middle type situation where you had a East Coast versus West Coast, who overall reigns supreme. Yeah, exactly. I think that could really end up in a really cool situation. I'm going to throw out my one huge critique that I have for GridLife, and that simply is, can we get some different people on the live stream? because I think I saw the Ford GT about every other second on the live stream. And again, nothing against the GT, but I'd rather see some differentiation. Our boy Kilgore here got demolished, did not get any time on that live stream. He got one word. Hey, look, there's Kilgore in the background. Oh, look, he did something. Okay, bye. Can we get some differentiation in the live stream a little bit so we can get to see some of these other cars and see their beauty, and maybe just like a little pit walk situation. You know, there's something nice to see when race cars are standing still, so you can actually get into them. And so if you didn't go to the event, you could still get that little piece, right? And I think everybody could probably agree they love to see the inner workings of all these cars and all their things, but I think besides that, the event is so cool to watch, so cool to be a part of, even though I wasn't a part of it. I got to have to live my life through Damien and Kilgore as they went and did their thing. But I can say without a doubt, you know, we can't wait for GridLife to come back to SoCal, to come to California at all, West Coast in general, so we can just keep doing more events with those guys, and so that people like myself and Kilgore can keep talking about these events and seeing how they pan out.
That's right.
All right, Kilgore, send us out. Tell them where they can find us. If they're not already watching us somewhere, tell us where they can find us. And quickly, I'll stop real quick. Damien, we forgot to ask you one thing. So give us a shout out to the shop, where we can find you on your social medias and so on and so forth.
Shop's called Renner Racing Development. Our Instagram is at Renner Racing Development. Same thing for Facebook. Pretty easy to get a hold of. Any emailing can be done over the website, so pretty easy to get a hold of.
Heck yeah, man. If you want to build a 22B replica for a Subaru, you're calling these guys. They're doing it for you because they do it the best. All right, Kilgore, send us out.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, as always. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts is where you can find us. Hit us up on Instagram. If you want to email us, we are more than happy to get your emails. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. If you have questions or if you have topics you want us to hit on, please let us know. You can email us at maximumattack@perfeclappodcast.com. That is maximumattack@perfeclappodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Comment if you're watching on YouTube. We already had a number of you guys, give us your thoughts. So it's always fun seeing what you all think, and we try and stay active on there, respond, and keep the conversation going. Damien, thanks for coming on, man. It was great. I know we were able to chat actually out at Laguna, so it was great meeting you out there. Best of luck at Global Time Attack Finals. That's going to be coming up in just a couple weeks. You guys know we're going to be hitting on that one. We're going to have having some stuff coming out for that event specifically. So we're excited to hear that. So we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Great. Thank you guys for having me.
Later.